Okay, it looks like we are right at 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening to those joining us for the 2045 Future Land Use Map Amendments virtual workshop. My name is Shannon Cox, and I'm the Long Range Planning Manager with the Town of Apex. Before we dive into the meeting content, I'd like to share a few guidelines for how you can participate effectively. Your questions and comments can be submitted at any time during this live event. You can use the chat box, which should be located right next to the video screen that you're watching, or you may dial in and leave a voicemail. The phone number and meeting code are also located next to that video, but they are 919-300-5265. The meeting code is 9407. And then you'll press *2 to leave a voicemail. Please note that your voicemails will be limited to 2 minutes. If you submit a question or comment through chat or voicemail, it will be visible to our meeting hosts only. So all comments will be anonymous. They will be read or summarized by our moderator this evening. And please know that if time does not allow for all submitted questions to be discussed, we will provide a summary of both questions and responses to the website that you are watching. A comment form is also available online for additional or more detailed comments. You can complete that on the meeting screen. It's also available at publicinput.com/P725. And finally, this event is being recorded and will be posted at apexnc.org/2045LUM. It usually takes us a day or two to get the recording posted. To provide a brief overview of our workshop agenda this evening, we will first do speaker introductions. We'll then provide a brief description of the purpose of these proposed amendments to the future land use map and the process used to bring these forward. Since these are all related to transit, we will provide an overview of both existing transit in Apex as well as what's coming soon. We'll then pause, go through the questions that we've received so far, and then dive into an overview of the future land use map, what it is, and how we use it. We'll then stop again for questions and answers, and then finally dive into the proposed amendments that are the main focus of the workshop this evening. We'll wrap up with additional questions and answers, and then next steps for how you can continue to be involved. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment so you can see our speakers this evening. Okay, here's everybody. So I am joined by Amanda Bunce, my co-presenter this evening. She's our current planning manager with the town, and will be providing the description of the future land use map and the proposed amendments. Also, Diane Kinn is with us. She's the director of the Department of Planning and Community Development and will help to field questions that come in. We have David Jerido with Go Triangle, and he's here to help answer questions related to Go Triangle services. And finally, we have Jenna Schaus, who's our moderator this evening and did the lion's share of the work to arrange this event. We also have several people behind the scenes to help make sure that the meeting runs smoothly. And we hope it does, but if you have any concerns, please reach out and we'll make sure that you have the information that we've shared. Okay, back to the slideshow. So the amendments tonight, I mentioned, are all related to transit. So these amendments are intended to make sure that we are both planning transit services that support our future land uses and that our future land use support the transit services that we're planning and putting in place. So often that involves increasing residential densities along transit routes or looking at potential non-residential mixed use or commercial uses. The amendments were initiated by the Planning Committee of Town Council. They requested that staff look at the transit routes, including Go Triangle Route 305, GoApex Route 1, and the GoApex Carry Express, to look at these routes and determine if what we're showing on our future land use map supports these transit services. We studied approximately a 300-yard buffer of each of these routes, which is slightly less than a quarter mile. And then within that buffer, focused in on specific areas where land use map amendments may be needed. So you should be seeing a map on the screen now. This is a map of Apex, and there's several boxed areas with letters. All of the future land use map amendments that we're sharing with you this evening are within those boxed areas. But before we dive into the amendments, we wanted to describe the transit routes. So this first yellow route represents GoApex Route 1. This is really exciting. This is our first local bus service. We are anticipating that this service will begin operating in late summer or early fall of this year. We have acquired funding to operate the service and to build the bus stops. We are currently designing the bus stops and working on the agreements needed to run the service. This route will run 6 days per week, so Monday through Saturday from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And what's especially exciting is that it will be free to everyone to ride. The next route added to this map in green represents the GoApex Carry Express. This is the newest bus route already in service in Apex. This started service on January 4th. This route has 2 stops in Apex, one on South Hughes near Compare Foods, and one on North Salem near Hunter Street, and 1 stop in downtown Cary at the Cary Depot, where riders can transfer to other bus routes or the Amtrak train. This route operates 5 days per week during peak commuting hours only, and there is a fare to ride this service. The blue line just added to the map represents Go Triangle's Route 305. Go Triangle Route 305 has been serving Apex for quite a while. However, there were some recent changes. The route was extended along Laura Duncan Road and Mason Street and all the way down to 55 and into the town of town of Holly Springs. So this is now the first bus route serving the town of Holly Springs. Currently, this route operates 5 days per week during peak commuting hours. However, it's anticipated that this route will be expanded potentially as early as April of this year, so that between Apex and Raleigh, it will operate 7 days per week, and it will operate all day on weekdays. There is a fare to ride this route. And then the last transit route is Go Triangle Route 311. Service on this route has been temporarily suspended due to the pandemic. However, it does typically operate between Apex and Research Triangle Park. This is a service that runs 5 days per week during peak commuting hours only. Given the limited service, this route was not one that was studied as part of the future land use map amendments, but we did want to provide it in the overview. So there is a lot happening related to transit in Apex. In addition to the work we're doing on GoApex Route 1 and the enhancements I described for Go Triangle Route 305, the town will be participating in a planning effort with the North Carolina Department of Transportation to study transit-oriented development around passenger rail. That study has not yet begun, but it will soon. So if you would like to stay updated on our transit services as well as planning efforts, I'd encourage you to go to apexnc.org/GoApex, and there is an email sign up there that you can share your email with us, and when there's news and updates, you'll receive that information. Okay, and we'll pause here for our first set of questions and answers. And I will stop sharing my screen. So Jenna, do we have any questions that have come in yet?
We have one comment, and it's not related to transit. Do we want to go ahead and share that or hold off until we get to that portion of the Q&A?
You can read it so that we can make sure we address it.
Okay, that sounds good. So I think this person was referring to Area F, the Beaver Creek area. And they said this area is currently surrounded by commercial, high density, and 540. Updating the land use map to high density to accommodate public transit would address the present and future needs for more or less expensive housing in the area.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we'll hopefully get to that when we look at Area F. And if not, you can remind us that there was that comment.
Okay, sounds good.
Anything else?
No, other people are just saying that goes gone. So I think everything else is logistics wise.
Okay, and we'll wait just a minute because there is a little bit of a delay between when we're speaking and when people see the presentation. So we'll just wait a minute here or a few seconds for any additional questions to roll in before we go to the next portion of the workshop. And anything else, Jenna, just before we check in?
One question and one comment. One person asks, will the bus stops be covered?
Okay, sure. So we are not installing shelters initially as part of GoApex. However, we do have a couple projects underway to identify bus stops for potential shelters that we're working to acquire funding for. And then over time, shelters can be added, which is typically based on ridership. So once we see which bus stops have the highest ridership, we would prioritize those for shelters. We have completed an analysis that's available on that apexnc.org/GoApex URL to determine which stops we would anticipate future shelters may be installed at. And so those designs for those bus stops will accommodate that further down the road. And there are a couple of existing bus stops that do already have shelters along Shepherd's Vineyard Drive and in the Beaver Creek area.
And then another question for you, Shannon, related to transit. And they ask, can you say again where the bus goes in Holly Springs?
So I didn't cover where the stops are in Holly Springs, but there's two stops currently. One is on Main Street and one is at the sports complex that I've been to many times, and I'm just lost the name.
I think
It's called
Ting Park.
Ting Park.
Ting Park. Yep. Thank you.
There are stops in both directions that serve those two locations.
I'll refresh to see if we receive any more transit questions. Okay, a couple more have come in. Okay. One person asked if there's a fee for GoApex, and no, there will not be a fee for GoApex Route 1. And then the next person asked, are there plans for a bus stop at a 540 Flex? And there are plans for a GoApex Route 1 bus stop outside of the 540 Flex installment to serve the Western Wake Crisis Ministry. And then they had a follow-up question asking about why there is a need for a bus stop at the Olive Chapel Professional Park, noting that their second building out of 5 was just finished last year, since the development began 4 years ago, and neither building is fully rented, especially the second building. And it asked if a study has been done or data collected on the need for this bus stop. And then it says it looks like there's proposing a change to the 2045 land use map at Chapel Ridge to justify a bus stop at Olive Chapel Professional Park. Shannon, I'll give that question to you.
Okay. Yep. And I'm going to share my screen once more to help respond to that question. So again, the yellow line on the map here represents the future GoApex Route 1 service, and the area in question is right here along Olive Chapel Road. The route was planned to be able to serve Western Wake Crisis Ministry, which we received numerous public comments was very important as part of the study of this route, as well as the professional park and 540 Flex area in general. In order to serve this area, the bus needs a safe place to turn around. And through testing and driving the bus, which will be one of the smaller buses similar in size to what you may see in the town of Cary, the best turnaround was in the professional park. And so the bus will head this direction, turn around, and then come back along this route. So that's kind of the background of why we have the route there and the stops in this area.
Okay, and then the next question is for, I think, Shannon and David, and asks if the buses will be electric.
I can take a stab at that first. So Go Triangle currently has 2 electric buses. We don't currently plan to implement them on the 305 and 311 yet. So most of our buses will still be diesel.
And Jenna, if you have anything to add to this, you're welcome to. But the town of Apex plans to partner with the town of Cary to operate GoApex Route 1. They do not currently have electric buses, although we have shared input that over time we would love to see electric buses in Apex.
And then another question is, this one's for Shannon, how is the Apex bus service funded?
So hopefully our audience is aware that I believe it was in early 2016 or November 2016, the referendum passed to support the Wake Transit Vision Plan. So in Wake County, there are taxes going to transit. And as part of that effort, or as part of that vision plan, there's a program called the Community Funding Area Program, so that mid-size and smaller communities like Apex, Holly Springs, Wake Forest, Morrisville have a resource to design and implement transit services that were not specifically included in the Wake Transit Plan. So the town of Apex has been successful in applying for and securing funding through that program to build bus stops as well as operate this service. It is a match funded program, so we do contribute a local match to this effort. We were also able to successfully receive a federal grant to build the bus stops. So the bus stop construction is almost paid entirely between the community funding area program and the grant that we were able to secure. And then finally, we were able to get another grant through the Transportation Demand Management Program, and that will help us to provide marketing, education, and outreach for GoApex, as well as other efforts that reduce vehicle miles traveled.
And then one more question, and I can answer for Apex, and I'll hand it to David for Go Triangle. And it asks, will the buses have bike racks? And the Go Apex Route 1 bus will, and then the Apex Carry Express does. And I believe Go Triangle's does, so I'll just confirm with you.
Yes, you're right. All of Go Triangle's buses have bike racks.
Cool, thank you. I think that was the last one. I'll refresh one more time. There are a couple more questions about transit. So the first one is, why did you not include Apex High in the free route? Seems that would increase ridership. Also Apex Park off Lower Duncan. So I guess I'll hand that to Shannon and David, because the 305 currently serves Lower Duncan Road.
Yes, so and Jenna, again, if you want to jump in, that's fine too. So the GoApex Route 1 was actually based on the highest priority route identified in our long-range transportation plan, with a few modifications from the short-range transit plan we did for GoApex Route 1. One of the reasons that Route 1 doesn't go past the high school and the community park is that they're in close proximity to Go Triangle Route 305. So we did not want to duplicate service, knowing that Route 305 will soon have all day and weekend service. So we're, by facilitating transfers, we're making sure that these routes work well together without duplicating the routes. And David, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to add to that.
I did want to add, Go Triangle rerouted 305 through Lower Duncan Road to serve the shopping center that's adjacent to Pine Plaza. That's why it currently runs down Lower Duncan.
And then just one more note about GoApex Route 1. We had to keep it within a 1 hour frequency. So we had to limit how far the one free route could go.
And I guess I'll add one thing to that. So this is the first route in Apex, and there is opportunity to expand in the future. So if there's places where you'd really like to see transit, please do share that input with us. And a good way to do that is to sign up for those email updates so that when there's an opportunity for public engagement, you can provide comments, and we'll continue to work to try to address those.
And there's a follow-up question on the previous question about 540 Flex and the Olive Chapel Professional Park, asking for clarification. They noted, will there be a bus stop at 540 Flex? And if so, can the bus get in there and get out? And then I'm trying to understand this question. I think this person's asking if the bus could get in the 540 Flex development to turn around, and then a stop at the Olive Chapel Professional Park would not be needed, because the one at the 540 Flex would serve the Western Wake Crisis Ministry. And I think the biggest thing for this one was that the bus wasn't able to safely turn around in the 540 Flex parking lot, but was able to use the small circle in the Olive Chapel Professional Park as a turning point to get back and maintain that 60-minute frequency and have a safe turnaround point. I'll click one more time to see if we receive any more transit before we move on to our next topic. Or is there anything, Shannon, that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think you covered it well. So hopefully we've explained that clearly. And if there's continued questions, please also feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to have a phone conversation or email conversation about it too.
There is one more about asking if the buses will have overhead or under seat storage for backpacks and luggage. David, I'll hand that one to you. I believe the Go Carry buses have some, but I don't want to speak to it because I don't remember exactly.
I can't exactly speak for Go Carry, but for Go Triangle's buses, I don't believe we have luggage storage on our buses for backpacks.
Oh yeah, I think same with Carry, not the overhead. Okay. Cool. Well, yeah, I should have mentioned just if you have any follow-up on transit, we're available by phone or email.
Okay, does that cover the questions that have come in?
I think that's it. We haven't had any a few minutes, but I'll refresh one more time. Yep,
really good. Okay, thanks. Really good questions. We appreciate people sharing their thoughts and questions with us. And I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. Just one second here. Okay. So now we're going to move on to discussion about the future land use map. And first of all, I'd like to talk about what is the future land use map. And essentially the purpose of this is to provide a recommendation for the types of future development that we would like to see in Apex. Basically, it establishes the long-range land use patterns for the town. And this, our most recent land use map, the 2045 land use map, was adopted almost 2 years ago now after extensive public engagement and comment period so we could get the input from the public, and then it was adopted by the council in February of 2019. The land use map is different from zoning. So zoning is regulatory and sets what you can and cannot do based upon the zoning of the property. But the future land use map is basically guidance. What types of zoning districts should be located in a certain area, and the overall broad land use types rather than the specific zoning districts. So there is a distinction between the two, with the land use map being the policy, the guide for the zoning, which is regulatory. For this amendment process, the amendment was initiated by the Planning Committee, as I believe Shannon mentioned earlier. And there was public notice, there will be a public notice posted for the public hearing online and on the information board, which is now outside of Town Hall. And then there will be public hearings in February before the Planning Board and the Town Council. The public hearing for the Planning Board is scheduled for February 8th. And assuming that we are all meeting in person again, the public hearing for Town Council and possible decision will be February 9th. If either of the meetings must be held remotely or with any members attending virtually, then state law requires us to postpone the vote on the public hearing to allow for additional comment period for 24 hours. And so just stay tuned with those dates. If there's any changes, then we will be sure to post that information online. So now I would like to go provide an overview of the types of the land use types that are represented in the proposed areas of change. There are 6 areas of change, and not all of the land use categories that we have on our map are found in these areas, so we'll just focus on those that are relevant. So we have a high density residential land use category, which basically sets a goal of at least 14 dwelling units an acre or greater, and this provides housing options near major commercial areas and transportation corridors, and primarily includes apartments, but can include townhomes, triplexes, and quadplexes, and other housing types of that nature. The next land use, residential land use category is medium high density residential, which provides a range of 7 to 14 dwelling units per acre. This is also a variety of housing options, primarily close to transportation corridors, but can include single family, townhomes, duplexes, and occasionally, in some areas can include apartments as well within the transit-oriented context area that's part of our Advanced Apex. And then the third land use type that's residential in nature that will be affected in these areas is medium density residential, which has a range of 3 to 7 dwelling units an acre. And this is where we start to see the transition away from the more urban parts of town and away from the major transportation corridors. And we typically find more single family uses, but can include duplexes and townhomes as well. So for our non-residential land use types, there are 3 that are in the areas of proposed change. The first is office employment. So this is a variety of businesses that are primarily professional and office oriented, such as maybe a lawyer's office, dentist, veterinarian, school. There's a variety of land use types that can be accommodated in the office employment category. And often is seen as somewhat of a transition between residential areas and our commercial areas, which leads to commercial services, which is the next land use type. And this can vary from small neighborhood scale commercial uses to large shopping centers like Beaver Creek. So there's a large range of size of developments that can occur in this category, and this can also include office uses as well. And then finally, we have the industrial employment land use category, which can vary intensity based upon where it is located. Keep in mind that, again, the land use map provides a broad category of which there are specific zoning districts that fall into these categories. And so light industrial employment can accommodate anything from tech flex office space to light manufacturing, warehousing, and similar. And then finally, we have areas that are mixed use on our land use map, and these are noted by areas with 3 or more land use categories. We call them 3 or more stripes on the land use map. And this varies in intensity, and there can be a multitude of combinations of the land use categories that would make something mixed use. And within these areas, at least 30% of the area should be set aside for non-residential uses. So we would not see a mixed use area be 100% residential. And mixed use can occur in generally 2 types of ways. Horizontal, where you have your commercial in one area and your office, and then your residential in another location. Or it can occur as vertical mixed use, where you have your retail and office space on the first floor, and then your residential, your apartments or condos above. And so now we're going to move on to any questions regarding the future land use map.
Amanda, there's one question so far. I'm going to hand this one to you. It asks if there is a category for undeveloped in the future land use map.
So we do not have a category for land we anticipate to remain undeveloped, but we do have areas in town that are noted. Well, there is one that is protected open space, and this is found typically along anywhere where we have a conservation easement, or, for instance, area that's owned by the Army Corps as you get close to Jordan Lake. And then we do have a rural residential density land use classification, which is basically one dwelling unit per 5 acres. And so nothing that's specifically undeveloped.
And then the next question is, will any of the land use for residential areas address affordable housing? I think that could be Shannon or Amanda.
So I would say that affordable housing can occur in any of the housing types. So there's not a specific category on the land use map for affordable housing specifically. I don't know, Shannon, if you have anything else to add to that.
I do. I would just like to add that, our listeners may also be aware that we're working on an affordable housing plan. We had a meeting similar to this to present the draft plan. We have public comment or a public hearing coming up with Town Council on January 26th. One of the recommendations in that affordable housing plan is to do what we're doing with these proposed amendments, to make sure that we are planning for land uses that support transit and vice versa, and specifically making sure that affordable housing is planned around transit. So just in general, this approach is consistent with the affordable housing plan. And I do want to mention, not related to this question, but a previous one, the question about why the free route, GoApex Route 1, doesn't serve Apex High School. And I did want our listeners to know that there's a program called the Youth Go Pass, where youth between the ages of 13 to 18 can get a Youth Go Pass and ride the Go Triangle routes for free as well. So just wanted to share that additional information.
And then the next question is there a map of land use that can be reviewed? And that'll be the next section in our presentation, taking a close look at each of the proposed changes. That was the last one so far. Let's see.
And while Jenna's looking for other comments, I will say that the complete future land use map can be found on the Planning Department's website. And there's the Advanced Apex plan as well that gives a description of all of the land use categories.
There's one more comment that's come in about the Chapel Ridge area. So this person noted that they would like to see Chapel Ridge remain medium density residential as opposed to the proposed medium high density residential and high density, especially high density. They have no desire to see high density development like there is at Hempstead. And they note that that's a maze of closely built townhomes with very little green space and narrow streets. They find it to be claustrophobic. And many of those townhomes were bought in that neighborhood were bought for speculation or rental property and not what they consider to be true home ownership. They say, okay, and then they asked that I mentioned that there were some changes to the proposed 2045 land use map based on the previous meeting with the Town Council and Planning Committee, and ask what are those changes. And that'll be the next section where Amanda will dig into the specific maps for the proposed changes that came out of the Planning Committee of Town Council.
Anything else, Jenna, before we move on?
Not then. I'll double check that nothing else has come in since then. that was the last one. So we should be good. Thank you.
All right. Share my screen again. And now we will move on to the areas of change. So our first area is along North Salem Street, Old Apex Road at Laura Duncan Road, and here's Candun Drive. And this is right at the border between Apex and Cary. This is an office commercial park that's partially developed. And Laurel Park Elementary is located across the railroad tracks in this location here. And transit service, the Go Cary Apex Cary Express route runs along North Salem Old Apex Road in this location. So currently this is designated as commercial services on the land use map. And the proposal is to add the high density residential land use category so that either land use, a rezoning to allow either land use could be supported. And we've proposed to and added this new designation, the A, to the land use map, indicating that where the A is present, the apartments are the only land use type that should be permitted. So not townhomes or single family or other types, only apartments. So our next area is the downtown north. There are two separate areas within within Area B. The first is the shopping center here at Laura Duncan and Old Raleigh Road, where the Food Lion is located. And the other area is at the north end of Hughes Street, right before it ends, where Jordan Oil is located and the storage yard across the street. And so currently the shopping center is designated as commercial services, and the areas off of Hughes Street are designated as industrial employment. The proposal is for the shopping center to add the high density residential land use category with an A, again indicating apartments as the residential housing type that is supported. And then for the areas off of Hughes Street, the proposal is to change the industrial employment to high density residential and office employment, again with that A designation. And this would allow this area to redevelop with office or apartment uses or mixed use with both in this location. Our next area is also downtown. It's known as Downtown South, and it's located at the corner of South Salem Street and Moore Street. First National Bank is located here, and you can see there's some vacant land behind the bank and the other parcels fronting Salem Street. And currently the land use map designates this area as medium density residential and office employment. And the proposal is to add the commercial services land use designation so that this area could be mixed use, and noting that apartments would be the, so we would have upper story apartments most likely, but apartments would be the housing type that is preferred. Since it's mixed use, at least 30% of this area should be set aside for non-residential. And so that is the proposed change at that location. And Area D, our fourth area of change, there's actually three areas within this area of change that are involved. So we have the fire station on the north side of Hunter Street, the parcel south of Walgreens on the west side of 55, and an assemblage of 4 to 5 parcels on the south side of West Chatham Street in this location here. And so currently, I'll review each one individually because they're each unique. The fire station property is currently designated as office employment, and the proposal is to add that high density residential land use category with the apartment designation. The second area is the parcel south of Walgreens, which is currently designated as office employment and commercial services. The proposal is to change the office employment category to high-density residential. And what this allows is for this property to develop either as multifamily, office, or commercial services, since office uses are allowed, fall under the commercial services land use category, or a mixed-use type development could be permitted, again, with apartments being the only residential housing type supported at this location. Preventing the three stripes prevents this area from being required to have 30% non-residential. And then finally, the third area are the parcels located off of West Chatham Street, which are currently designated as medium density residential. And the proposal is to add the high density residential land use category with the apartment designation. Moving on to Area E, we have Apex Peakway South, and there are two areas within, two parcels within this area that are proposed to change. The first is at South Hughes Street and Perry Road, and the other parcel is at Tenjin Road and Apex Peakway. And this is actually a portion of a larger parcel. Currently, the property off of Tenjin and Apex Peakway is designated as medium density residential. And the proposal is to add the high density residential land use category without the A designation, which means it could any of the housing types supported in the medium density or high density residential land use categories would be supported here. So this would range from single family, duplexes, townhomes, or apartments. And the parcel at South Hughes Street and Perry Road would receive, add the high density land use designation with the apartment designation. And our final area of change is the Beaver Creek, Chapel Ridge, and Vision Drive area. So the parcel off of Vision Drive is where Lifetime Fitness is located. And then we have the Beaver Creek Shopping Center, the Chapel Ridge neighborhood, and the parcels adjacent to Chapel Ridge. So on the current land use map, the parcel off of Vision Drive is designated as commercial services, and the proposal is to add the high density residential land use category with the apartment designation, recognizing that parcels such as this have the opportunity to redevelop, and apartments would be conducive for this type of area. Same is true for the shopping center portion of Beaver Creek, where it's currently commercial services only. And the proposal is to add the high density residential land use category with the apartment designation to allow land within these shopping centers to potentially redevelop with apartments as the land use. And then for the Chapel Ridge subdivision and the adjacent parcels, these are currently designated as medium density residential on the land use map. And the proposal is to change the land use category to medium high density residential and high density residential without the A designation. So the permitted land use types in here would range from townhomes to apartments, triplexes, duplexes, any range of housing types, generally at a residential density of at least 7 dwelling units an acre or higher. And I believe that is the last of our areas of proposed change. And now we can move to question and answers.
So we have 3 questions or comments that have come in so far. The first is a transit-related question, and they're asking for clarification on if there will be a bus stop at the 540 Flex. I'll just note that there will be a bus stop on Olive Chapel Road that's planned to serve the 540 Flex development, but it's not planned to go inside the actual development. if that helps clarify. And then the next question is if there is any way to prefer senior apartments here. And I believe this person was referring to area D, but if not, if you could add a comment or a question to clarify. I think that came in while we were looking at the area along 55 and Olive Chapel. I'll give this question to Amanda.
At 55 in Olive Chapel?
I think it was. Yeah.
Yes. So the parcel, any of the parcels, I guess, in that area. So the land use map doesn't make a distinction between who is served by the housing types. But if there were a rezoning in that area to change the zoning to propose multifamily, then that public comment could be provided to support senior housing in that area.
And then let's see if okay, another question for Amanda. Are you suggesting that Jordan Oil find a new location?
So what the change in the land use map does is if Jordan Oil chooses to move and sell their property to allow for redevelopment, then it provides them more opportunities for redevelopment that is more appropriate than the industrial employment category, given the location next to single-family residential and town hall. It provides more redevelopment opportunities for them.
Okay, and the next comment, this person is giving their recommendations for each area. So I'll read through it. They said I can't stay. They know that they can't stay for the entire meeting, but their recommendations are here, and they note that area A, they're recommending high density residential and commercial services. In area B, and just another note, all of these will be captured in a public meeting survey at the end. So we're just reading through it now, but it'll all be captured in a summary. In area B, high density residential / commercial services, noting to consider traffic entering and exiting North Elm Street, and the traffic circles instead of a stop sign or stoplights is recommended. And for area C, low density residential, office employment, and commercial services. And area D, leave as in 2020 photos, or at least leave all the trees alone. Area E, leave as in 2020 photos, or at least all the trees, or leave all the trees alone. The unforested area could be medium density residential, commercial, or office employment. And then for area F, leave forested areas untouched. Currently paved areas can be used for high density residential or / commercial. And then the next comment is for the downtown area behind Salem Street. If it was mixed use, would that mean apartments or condos over retail / restaurants? Can you speak to what that would look like? Amanda, I'll get that question to you.
Okay. So it could be a vertical mixed use with office or commercial on the ground floor with a residential use above, apartments above. And as far as what that would look like, we do have some design standards within the small town character overlay district that would ensure new development would be compatible with what's there. And keep in mind, that's where the zoning and any rezoning to allow a mixed use development, we would look very closely at that process and any zoning conditions that may or not that may be needed to ensure compatibility of that use with the surrounding uses.
And there's one more comment. It clarifies the earlier one. I thought they were looking at the downtown west, but they were looking at the downtown north area near the senior center. I'll see if anything else is coming. Okay, a few more comments have come in. So here's a question. Will the proposed residential changes for Chapel Ridge area also require 30% of the area be designated for non-residential uses?
So the answer to that is no. There will only be two land use stripes. So the medium high density residential and high density residential categories. So mixed use would not be required in Chapel Ridge.
Okay. And then the next comment is that Area F is currently surrounded by commercial, office, high density, and I-540. Updating the future land use map to high density to accommodate public transit would address, oh, this is the one that came in before, would address the present and future needs for more or less expensive housing in the area and will reduce traffic congestion in the area. Thanks for posting again, reminding us to bring that up. And then the last comment is, it looks like most of these changes are to limit residential growth to apartments only. As long as the density is dense enough, isn't it a little short-sighted to limit to apartments only? What if the affordable housing plan allows for more options, which can still accommodate home ownership?
So I will say, generally speaking, density is good along transit routes, and apartments typically have are the most dense housing type, generally speaking. And in order to achieve a goal of at least 14 dwelling units an acre, or around that, the apartment category is needed. That doesn't preclude affordable housing projects from happening in other areas that are still in close proximity to transit stops on the land use map. Shannon, do you have any other comments to add to that?
Not really. I think, Amanda, that you covered it well, and I do think that there's numerous other changes beyond just limiting residential densities to apartments. Just going through these different areas. So I'm not sure that's entirely accurate either, but they are aimed at increasing density around transit.
And there are a couple more comments. This person noted that that it's sad to hear of all of this and that it sounds horribly congested and very little green space in the downtown area and the chance for tons of apartments. And then the last one that's come through so far is, let's be careful filling in all open space with higher density. Preserve as much green space as possible inside the town limits. See if anything else has come through so far. Okay, so one more has popped up. It said, how times have changed since the last town council. No more roofs, in quotation marks, yet. Here we are going from rural residential to high density, changing times. What made Apex so special seems to be becoming high density housing. What a shame. Okay, looks like that's the last one we have. Unless we want to give it, I'll refresh one more time in case anything has come in, since there's a little bit of a lag. Okay, I think we can move on to the next section.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we are about to wrap up here. We just wanted to cover next steps, which this information has been shared throughout the presentation, but just to repeat it, we really appreciate the input that's been provided, both supportive of the proposed amendments as well as with ideas that would suggest other options or no changes. We would greatly appreciate your written comments. You can use the survey form that should be in front of you if you're watching this. It's at publicinput.com/P725. We would appreciate feedback by January 31st. However, you may continue to submit comments to us all the way up to and through the public hearings. What we will do as staff is summarize the input that we've heard and we receive through the comment form and share that with our planning board and town council. Planning board will have a public hearing on February 8th at 4:30 p.m. They will consider the amendments and the feedback provided and make a recommendation regarding these amendments to town council. Town council will then have a public hearing on February 9th at 6:00 p.m. And the decision to adopt the amendments is theirs. So you'll have an opportunity to share feedback at either public hearing or both public hearings, and the decision will be made by town council. We do want to note that, we're all flexible and adaptable during the pandemic, and please do continue to check the Town of Apex website and our public notices regarding any changes to the meeting formats as far as public hearings are concerned, as well as dates. That information will be posted there. So once again, thank you for joining us this evening and for sharing your input, and we look forward to hearing from you.